Who says you can never go back home? Out with the new, in with the old? I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. I can't believe this is something I even have to talk about, but it's become a big enough story now that it's got to be discussed among amongst us Jets fans. In case you missed it, for those who didn't catch this earlier today, former New York Jets head coach Rex Ryan was on ESPN. Han and somebody and I don't listen to the fan because I don't live in New York, and but obviously I catch when something noteworthy comes up and it goes viral or pops up on my feed. I see it. Han and somebody, um, and it was like a 40-second clip that I listened to. Maybe been Bart Scott, maybe I think so. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. WFAN, give them their credit. I think I was wrong. I think it was ESPN Radio. I think it's ESPN Radio. Google it. Rex Ryan wants to be a Jets coach again, and you'll get the right name. Um, so Rex Ryan basically says, if I come back, if I'm the guy, if I'm the coach, who's going to get these guys to play harder than I am? And this is hilarious. This is crazy that we're even having this conversation. And listen, I was a big Rex guy. I loved Rex. Loved him. How can you not? I mean, to each his own. But how can you not be a fan? Like, if you're my age, if you've been a fan of this team for 30 years, for 35 years, for 40 years, there's a good chance, depending on how you view this whole thing. Some people dislike Rex so much they don't want to give any credit. But the reality of the situation is, over the past 30, 40 years, no Jets team has had more success than those that were coached by Rex Ryan. That's it. That's all. Like, the highest of highs, making the postseason and winning postseason games, which is about as good as it gets for Jets fans. Nobody did it more than Rex. And some people will say, and I know a lot of people who say, well, he did it with Mangini's team. He did it with Mangini's team. There was some truth to that, but there was some very, very key areas where couldn't be further from the truth. Um, Rex had Mark Sanchez, who was terrible. Terrible. Eric Mangini had Brett Favre. Um, Mangini made the playoffs one year, got his doors blown off in New England, and then never really. He went to Cleveland, they stunk, and then he was gone. He was a tight ends coach for a year. Maybe he's gone. But this is Mangini. He's a personnel guy, where he did some good things. He had Terry Bradway delivered him Darrelle Revis, and he agreed with Bradway and signed him and things like that. But the bottom line with Rex, or the thing with Rex to me is, and I'm not saying if he should be back or not. I'll share my thoughts on that at some point. By the way, log in, check out the Jet Nation Twitter page or my Twitter at JNRadio_Glenn. We've got a poll going. Do you think Rex should be back as the Jets head coach? And really, I don't even really have to. We'll go over that real quick. I'm going to guess these are where the results are going to stay. We're sitting at a few hundred votes right now. 244 votes. And this is the range it's been in the whole time. It's going back and forth, yes, no, between sort of 55, 45, somewhere in that range, and sometimes closer. In fact, right now, 52% say yes, bring Rex back. Well, 52.5%, and then 47.5% say no, don't bring him back. So the thing with Rex, as I said, I don't see how you can not like him if you've been a fan for 35, 40 years. If the point is to win games, win big games, no one's done that more than Rex, regardless of what happened after that. The thing that I liked about Rex Ryan, not just the fact that he genuinely, listen, every coach says they love where they are. But we know Rex Ryan's, his father's history there. Buddy won a ring. Rex has seen his father, win a championship with the Jets. But also with the Bears, where I think that's where Rex, and I've heard this said before, that someone said privately before Rex was the Jets coach. They asked him what his dream job would be. And he said the Bears, and that makes sense. because Rex was in the stands watching his father get carried off the field on the shoulders of his players when the Bears won the Super Bowl. So, but the next closest thing would be the Jets, because Buddy won a Super Bowl there. So Rex genuinely, it means something to him to be a Jet, which is, again, shouldn't be a prerequisite for the job, but it's nice. It's nice. You don't hire him because of that. But as a fan, you're like, oh man, this guy, like, this means something to him. Like we keep saying, right? There's only 32 of these jobs. There are, and most guys who want that job would take a job anywhere. But given the choice, how many guys would have the Jets in their top 3 of places they'd like to coach? I believe the Jets are in Rex's top 2. But again, it's about results on the field. The thing I liked about Rex, other than the obvious, the playoff wins, was the fact that I never felt that he didn't get the most out of his players, which is the polar opposite of what you got out of Robert Saleh. Saleh's gone. Incredibly, I mean, you could argue, not even you could argue. Of course, Rex's offensive lines were better. But 1 through 53, this roster is as good or better. Rex had no pass rushers. Calvin Pace. Who was Rex's Will McDonald? Who was Rex's Quinnen Williams? He didn't have those guys. Rex had Revis, of course. But that first year they went to the playoffs and beat teams, beat Peyton Manning on the road. No, I'm sorry. Take that back. That was when they lost to Manning. But they beat Cincinnati. They beat San Diego, I believe. Yeah, it was San Diego and Cincy. Who was the other corner? Like, they didn't Strickland and Shepard. He had cast off veteran corners who were out of the league in a couple years, starting alongside Revis. The NFL has changed, but even back then, it was a passing league, and you had to be able to cover more than one guy. So yeah, Revis could take out a receiver, but Rex had journeyman on the other side, and did a really good job. So my thing with Rex was he got the most out of his players, complete opposite of Robert Saleh. And the difference is, of course, I mentioned he had Mark Sanchez. Everyone says, oh, he won with Mangini's team. Mangini didn't have Mark Sanchez. But also the keys, really, what made those Jets teams so incredible was that defense. Was awesome defense. And who was at the core of those defenses? Well, he brought in Bart Scott, one of his guys, to run his system. And he brought in Jim Leonard, one of his guys, to run his system. Remember, there was some little bit of public unhappiness with Kerry Rhodes, who Kerry Rhodes was a good player, but he wasn't one of Rex's guys. And Rex wanted his guys to run his defense. And that's how they won football games. So all this he won because of Mangini's O-line. Let's not forget Rex's defense. It's not like they were winning, 38-35 every week. That was arguably the best defense in the NFL without a true pass rusher, with only one good corner. So Rex did work some magic. However, that was a long time ago. And things did fall apart for Rex. I put that on Idzik. John Idzik, the worst GM this team has had in my time as a Jets fan. People say to me, oh, you only had 2 years. You only had a short time. Yeah. When you draft like that, you only get a short time. Had one class with 12 players, found nobody. Quincy Enunwa, the day 3 pick out of Nebraska, who everybody loved. I loved Quincy. Quincy was one of the first players I did an interview with when I started covering the Jets for Jet Nation. Classy guy, but injury prone. But that was it. You had a backup guard in Dakota Dozier, who started for a couple years in Minnesota, and I thought Dozier was great too. Great kid, great person. Spoke to some of his former O-line coach from college, and he raved about him. Told him, sort of off the record stuff, like this is the kind of kid he is. And I rooted so hard for Dakota Dozier because I have this thing where I root for good people. I just do. And Dozier, from the stories I heard about him, incredible kid. But he didn't work out, and that was it. Nobody else in that class did anything out of 12 guys. Just terrible drafting from Idzik. Terrible everything from Idzik. That's why he's been gone how long? He's not had a GM shot. His son is an offensive coordinator now, or working on an offensive staff. Jacksonville, maybe. No, because that's where Izzy went. That's where I'm thinking of Jacksonville. But anyway, let's hope he doesn't land with the Jets. So Rex Ryan, we had the playoff success, a lot of fun, obviously. Then things fall apart. Then he goes to Buffalo, never gets off the ground in Buffalo. I don't know how much. I mean, listen, Rex. It's not as if Rex Ryan is in a position to say, "Well, if you bring me back on board, I have to have full control." Like Rex is not in that position. He's not thought of that highly. And I don't think he would. I don't think he would want full control, and nor should he be given full control if he goes anywhere, because his talent evals. He he pushed for Muhammad Wilkerson, who ended up being a dog. Muhammad Wilkerson played hard until he got paid, and then he dogged it. And there's the phone call that Rex made to him when they drafted him, the draft day phone call. And it's years ago, so I forget the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, you can't take any plays off here. So it was something he saw. They saw in this guy that he didn't play hard, but Rex still wanted him. Quentin Coples, another one, which I guess you can't kill him for Coples, because honestly, you look at Coples, the reports on him prior to his final year at UNC, there were people, he was being projected as the number one overall pick in the draft. He was immensely talented. But then he dropped off his senior year, but there were questions about, similar to Will McDonald, well, new coaching staff, and they moved him around a little bit, played him out of position, get him in his natural position, he'll be fine. He wasn't fine. The bottom line, the drafting this team did while Rex was in the building was not very good. It was very bad. Now, did Rex have any power? You would imagine, even when a GM is ultimately making the picks, there's going to be some input from the head coach that's going to be considered. Like, you're not going to sit here and tell me Rex didn't want Quentin Coples, Rex didn't want Muhammad Wilkerson. Like, these are guys he wanted, and they were bad. Rex, personnel wise, it was not a good situation. But I understand why half of Jets fans want him back, because that's the last time this team was successful. I remember when he was fired, and listen, by the time he got let go, even though I was a fan, even I was like, look, it's time. Like, it's run its course. The team has fallen apart. It needs a rebuild. You're not going to keep the same coach around to rebuild this thing. But Woody Johnson, at the same time, Woody didn't want to fire him. And I don't, if you listen to me, you have been for however long, one thing you'll find, I don't do the fake source thing. I don't do the somebody told me this and I know that. And there are people in the building who confided in me. No, I don't do that. But this was a rare situation where I had the chance to speak with somebody who was in the locker room and in the building. And they said to me, they said, Woody doesn't want to fire Rex. Like, Woody really likes Rex, but he's in a corner right now because the team is that bad. The change has to be made. But that was a firing Woody did. And I can't speak to the other firings. But Woody wasn't happy about having to fire Rex. Why is there a chance he could come back? Now, this is all media driven, fan driven, but Rex driven, because Rex has opened that can. And there was an interview probably a couple months ago. I forget what week it was after. And I can't remember if I retweeted it with the joke. I know I started to, and I thought, people are going to say I'm clickbaiting or whatever. So I don't know that I sent it. But there was one particular segment on whichever show Rex was doing. And to me, I'm watching it, and I'm like, this dude is asking for his job back. Like, he was his team is so good, and they can be so good. They need the right leadership. I'm like, Rex, I see what you're doing. I see, it was like, might have been week 3 or 4, whatever it was. But anyway, he came out today and said it flat out. Make me the coach, and these guys will play hard. You'll see them play hard. Which, I mean, that is what this team needs. They need that to happen. But as a guy like Rex, who's been out of the league as long as he has, he was a defensive coordinator at a time that the league was running offenses differently. A lot's changed, and it's hard to imagine someone coming back and having that same success. But getting back to why there's even the most remote chance, like even the tiniest sliver, that Woody Johnson would even consider bringing Rex Ryan back. And I'm not saying Rex is coming back. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying I want Rex back as much as I love him. The Jets are a dumpster fire. People aren't going to want this job. I don't care. I know there's some writers out there. Oh yeah, there's going to be good. No, good candidates are not going to be lining up for this job. Albert Breer, really good piece in Sports Illustrated. Check it out. Albert Breer said, "This is 25 years of Woody Johnson, and no matter who it is, GMs, coaches, they keep running into the same thing, and that thing is Woody listening to non-football people who have his ear." 25 years of Woody leaning on his non-football people more than his football people. Jaime Elhai, Ira Axelrod. We've talked about Jaime on the show a little bit over the years. I talk about how before Jaime had his current position, he was pointed out to me at training camp one year, and someone told me that's the guy. You know, they said, "Do you know who that guy is?" I said, "No." They said, "It's Jaime Elhai. He's the money guy. The Johnsons don't make any major moves without checking with him first. They run the numbers by him, and he tells them if it's worth the investment." Non-football guy having major impact on the football operations. Ira Axelrod's name has come up recently. I'm not going to pretend to know much about anything about him. I've heard his name maybe once or twice over the years. Haven't heard what he does in the building, but the reports are that these are the two people Woody are leaning on. They were in the room to, they've been in the room for a lot of the major decisions, courting Aaron Rodgers, this meeting that supposedly took place. And we're going to talk the Woody Johnson stuff from The Athletic. We're going to cover that tomorrow night on the show. We're going to do another show, me, Dylan, Chris. They couldn't do tonight, but we really want to discuss that. We're going to do that tomorrow night. But anyway, so Woody is running a ship that I don't believe major or desirable candidates are going to want to work for. Like, there will be guys who want the jobs, obviously. This is what people keep saying. Oh, there's only 32. Yes, somebody will want it. A low tier guy who other teams don't want. That's who will be available. And maybe he's strike gold. And, look at when Doug Peterson got hired in Philly. They got laughed out of town, and the guy goes and wins a Super Bowl. Not saying that's happening. Just saying maybe you get lucky and the 7th or 8th best candidate happens to be the best candidate when all is said and done. But you're not getting the premier guys at the top of your list. As I said to someone earlier, unless you believe Woody Johnson is going to outsmart the rest of the league and find a guy that nobody else is anticipating to be any good. Give me just 1 second. All right. Anyway, so I don't think Woody's going to outsmart anybody and find his way to, stumble into a really good head coach and a really good GM that everybody else or that nobody else knows about. That's just not in the cards. But the problem with Woody, or the reason it's a possibility, as I was saying, is that Woody, from listening to the wrong people, from getting this reputation, isn't going to have a ton of candidates, and he's raising ticket prices again. Ticket prices are going up. He's going to want to coach with some that energizes the fan base a little bit. And as you can see, again, it's not this is not a scientific poll, obviously. I'm not pretending it is. But and that's been the other charge against Woody, is that he pays too much attention to, the whims of the internet. So is he going to be checking and seeing, like, what does the fan reaction seem to be over Rex saying he wants to come back? If it's popular enough and he thinks he's better than some of the other candidates that are willing to consider the job, and it'll make it easier for him to raise those ticket prices, that's why I don't think it's crazy. Again, not saying it's going to happen, not saying I want it to happen, just saying that's the reason why it's worthy of a conversation. Rex now publicly saying he wants the job, Woody raising ticket prices, and having these reports come out that are really going to make it difficult for him to attract candidates. I will even say I don't think it's going to happen. I'm not, I'm surprised at how many people want it. But again, I think a lot of people are thinking back to winning playoff games, being relevant. The last time that happened, Rex Ryan was the coach. And people get nostalgic, and sometimes they forget the bad and they only remember the good. Rex was too defensive centric. He let things slip on the offensive side of the ball too often. Let's hop in the comments here real quick. Dano, how we doing, bud? Says Rex is a consideration most because they're short-sighted, don't have any other candidates. And I haven't looked in the chat yet, so that's kind of where I'm at. Similar to what I'm saying, Dana, right? Is that I don't think they're going to have a long list of people banging down their door for this job. NJ Lauren, how we doing, Lauren? Says Rex is like fond memories of an ex-partner. I just said the memory, and I almost used that example, Lauren. I almost said like people start to reminisce, and you only remember the good. Over time, you reminisce about the good times. I should have finished your comment. You tend to forget why you broke up. Rex was fun, loved his energy, but he also had a lot of flaws. Exactly. Now, the part of that, Lauren, and again, not endorsing, condoning, wanting Rex, but I do often feel that sometimes when coaches get fired and have time away, that helps. That helps them work on the flaws. But again, Dano again, like never moving on from his guys, never making painful benching. Yeah, that was the case with Rex too. The Jets have had that for a few years now. Bowles, Rex, guys just not sitting dudes, and I think it's a league wide thing. Like dudes rarely it's not like the old days where if you made mistakes you got benched. Now everything is so much about ego and feeling and not wanting to hurt anyone, and we'll let them work through it, and we'll guys don't get benched as often as they used to. Could be my imagination, but it certainly feels that way. Micro Fox says Rex Ryan can absolutely win with this team. It's the same this time around. He'll win with the Joe Douglas team. This is the thing, or the point that I just made. That's the one thing, or I would say that's the biggest thing that makes Rex appealing to me. Is that and this is just my opinion. Others may disagree. That's fine. But I always felt like Rex got the most out of his teams. Like when they weren't very good, when the results weren't very good, those teams were horrible. The first year with Idzik, when I think Idzik was setting him up to try to get a 2-14 season out of him to fire him, and he goes 8-8, and it's like what am I going to do with this guy? I'm giving him garbage talent up and down the roster, and he wins 8 games. So, which is again the opposite of Salah. You gave him a lot of talent, and he can't sniff the playoffs. So again, that's probably to me the number one case you could make for Rex if you're in favor of Rex coming on. Not so much saying, oh, he went to the playoffs, but saying you never looked at a team with him. And I've said since I was a kid, when I used to watch baseball all the time, I was a huge baseball fan back in the day. And I used to say Felipe Alou to me was the best manager in baseball, even though the Expos would, they would have these terrible results. They'd have these really bad seasons, but you always felt like he was getting the most out of his players. And I would just watch and think, you can say what you want about their win-loss record. But this guy, there's no question whether or not he's maxing out his talent. And I feel like that's what Rex often did, was he got the most out of his talent. Matthias says, looks like Rex is looking better. I assume you mean as an option. He, like I said, that's again another case for Rex is who else is going to line up for this job. But listen, there is a lot. As much as a lot of fans love Rex, Rex has some hate, like a lot of deep hate, and I know this to be the case, and I kind of understand it. I like I said, I love the guy, but even by the end, I was tired. Like I didn't mind the brash talk early on, kind of get your players fired up to play for you. But when you're getting your teeth kicked in every week and you're still talking big, it's like, dude, come on, man. Like there's a time and place. Sometimes you do have to be humble. Sometimes you have to realize we're not very good, and I'm not going to say that we are. But that was a lesson Rex never learned, and I think some of his. I remember there was a time LaDainian Tomlinson commented on it, and he said he felt like Rex gave other teams legitimate bulletin board material. Um, you know how you say you get the other team's best shot when you're the Super Bowl champ. That's why it's harder after you win one, which I think is completely true. And the Jets, even though they never won anything, teams would come in and be like, "Oh, okay, this is the team that said they're going to do this to us. This is the guy with the head coach who said they're going to kick our asses this week. Okay, let's see." And Tomlinson at one point went to Rex and said, "Dude, dial this back. Like you're making this harder on us." So did he learn his lesson? I honestly don't remember what he was like in Buffalo. It feels like a million years ago. Um, Lauren says he left the offense to Schottenheimer. He did. Rex wanted nothing to do with the offense. It's almost a good thing. That's the thing is Rex would be a good DC, but as a head coach again, not so much. Dano says he has no competition. It's 50-50. Do you mean Rex for the job, Dano? Because they're going to interview people. Matthias, Rex brings a culture. He does, but is it a good culture? Maybe a little too boisterous, a little too brash, overly confident. Um, but like I said, there's good and bad to Rex. There's good and bad. Um, but the people who hate him don't see the good, and the people who love him don't see the bad. Even though, having said, I was a huge Rex fan, I used to go back and forth with people about him all the time. But I understand where they're coming from. Let's go with Woody, Rex, and Aaron. That I don't know. We can go from all gas, no brakes to AARP. I'll tell you what. I don't know if I don't know how much longer. I don't know if Aaron's going to hang around next year. I don't think he will. I think it'd be shocking if he did. Um, let's see. Say what you want. Rex is a Jet, whether he's a coach or not. 100%, Matthias. That's what I meant about him. He's wild wave. How we doing, buddy? Yeah, that's what I was saying at the top, Matthias. That Rex is a guy who you genuinely feel wants to be here. I say here like I'm in New York. I live in England, but it's habit. It's habit. Cut me some slack. Jojo Townsell says, great player, Jojo Townsell. Was he number 83? I forget. That was my very, very early Jets fan years. Return man. But yeah, Jojo Townsell says no Rex again. Lawrence says players played hard for Rex, but also played stupid, dumb penalties. Yes. Very true, Lauren. Very reminiscent of the Salah thing. I think Salah was worse, I think. But Rex, a lot of penalties with Rex's guys. Let's see. Michael McDonald, Cromartie, I think. I must have missed something. I'm not sure what that's in. Oh, here we go. Yeah, they had Cromartie. Thomas Hess. This team is dead. True. Franchise is over. Feels that way. I was a fan since 1982, but I'm done. 1987, but I'm still here. I don't know why. As long as Woody Johnson owns this team, it's going to go nowhere. Probably right. Total shit show. I agree. Nothing incorrect with what you said there, Thomas. Matthias, again, Rex just needs a good offensive coordinator. He does, but he has for a while. Jojo Townsend says head coach Flores, OC McCown. Love McCown as OC. If I've said this before, if I'm hiring a defensive guy, it's Aaron Glenn. And I'm certainly I'm not hiring Flores if I'm the Jets because you're going to bring in a young quarterback. You're going to want to develop him. And the Tua thing with the way he talked to Tua, that I don't have as much of a problem with. Like that's whatever you want to call it, tough love, testing a guy's metal, not babying him. I can mostly excuse that. But I feel like there was a lot of like you're benched, you're playing, you're benched, you're playing, you're benched, you're playing. Like doing that combined with telling the guy he sucks. Um, I don't know if that's the best guy to bring on to develop a quarterback. Like have a plan in place. Don't tear him down. Be hard on him, yeah. When he makes a bad throw, hey man, you gotta do better than that. Like I have no problem being critical of a guy. And look, I wasn't there, and this is Tua's word against Flores, but the reports that he basically tell him you suck and you can't play in this league, whatever it was. To me, it was over the top. It was like you can't you can knock a guy, you can challenge him, you can point out his mistakes, and you don't have to baby him. I'm not saying you do that, but I don't know. I feel like Flores took it a little too far, and I don't know that I want that guy in charge of developing a quarterback. I'm tired of the Mangini thing. If they were his players, then let him be the GM. Yeah, Mangini, like I said, he did some good things, brought in some good players, but yeah, wasn't a very good football coach. And like I said, the Revis thing, there's the famous story that was Terry Bradway calling the Jets from the road, like went and watched Darrelle Revis play. Terry Bradway did, and called them from the road and was like, "This guy is our first round pick. Get him no matter what. Trade up, whatever you have to do. Get Darrelle Revis." And once he spoke to Tannenbaum, Mangini, whoever, they watched and they agreed with him. But that was Terry bringing Revis into the fold, and it's one of those things where if you like Mangini, you credit him with everything, and if you don't, you don't. It's kind of like it's no different than what's going on right now with Joe Douglas, right? And Robert Saleh, the Saleh fans, oh, he did no wrong, and the Douglas fans, like I'm not gonna like rewrite history. I was a big Joe Douglas guy. I still believe, whether people agree with me or not, I couldn't care less. I still believe there's talent on this team. Like, other people can disagree and say he sucked and he didn't find any players and his drafts were garbage. I happen to disagree. I think Garrett Wilson's good. I think Olu Fashanu is going to be good. I think Malachi Corley's going to be good. I think Joe Tippmann's good. I think AVT a little bit slow out of the blocks this year, but played a little better. Granted, he got dinged up, but I think Brees Hall is good. I think there's good players on this roster, and I think the next GM is gonna get a running start. That McCagnon and Zeke Douglas, none of them had it. So and look, I said Joe D blew the Rodgers trade. He paid too much. I said that he blew the Fashanu pick. That should have been Bowers. So I've criticized him along the way, but there definitely areas where I give him a little more leeway than the fans who hate him and they Mekhi Becton always sucked. Like, anyone who watched football, anyone who watched him play as a rookie knows deep down that's not true. But they hate Douglas enough that they're like, oh, that guy sucked. They shouldn't have picked him. Anyway, we're gonna get off the Joe Douglas thing. Dano, let's talk about Rex, baby. That was like let's title this one. What better name for that? Let's see. What else do we have here in the chat? Rex also kept people like Dukas, Golston around. He forced out Davis and Well, you got to remember with Golston, that was at a time, I believe they were still in the era where those guys made a ton of money. And letting go of Golston would have been a massive cap hit. They didn't keep him around long. And Rex said in his book that he was at the combine for the Ravens that year and talked to Mangini and said that he thought Golston was a phony. That was the exact word he used. That kid's a phony. I wouldn't draft him. And then the Jets took him and Rex was stuck with him. So I don't think he had a lot of choice for those. You had to keep guys back then for a couple of years because the cap hits were just enormous. Let's see. GM Island Empire. Rex is the only guy who wants the job. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's after this news. Do you think people want to come here? Like I said, please tune in tomorrow night. The reason why we're going to do another show tomorrow night, the Woody story is a big one. And I think myself, Chris, and Dylan, I think we've all got very different views of what's being reported, how it's being reported, what's believable, what's not. And I think that's going to be a good watch. And when the guys couldn't do the show tonight, when all three of us couldn't be here, I messaged them and said, let's do one tomorrow. I think tomorrow night, all three of us, I think that's going to be a worthy conversation. So be sure to tune in, check that out. Give those guys a follow too. Give me a follow at JNRadio_Glenn, Dylan at D Terriman, and Chris Schubert at Chris Schubert on Twitter. Give us a follow. At least with Rex, you know what you're going to get in personality, how the players will play for him. That's Rob. That's a big part of it, man. Like I said, guys played hard for Rex. And that's not to say he didn't have some embarrassing losses. And thinking back, there were probably some games late in those seasons where guys didn't play hard. But you're going to see that this year. Listen, when you're out of it by week 7, week 14, 15, 16 roll around, you're going to find guys dogging it. And it's like you want to get on them, but they're human beings. Guys that just go balls to the wall every single snap of their careers. There aren't many of those guys. That's just not reality. The Lions shared a similar post with the Jets, but they have turned it around. They draft well. They do. And like I said, I think, if you had a coach that got the most out of this Jets roster, nobody would be losing their jobs right now. Like, everybody would be happy. The Jets would be 8-3 or 7-4 on their way to the playoffs, and we'd all be in a good mood. But instead, they didn't get the most out of their talent. Look, I talked about the offensive line the other day, and I'll keep talking about the offensive line. And maybe after however many years in the league, let's give Keith Carter some credit. Instead of always knocking him, maybe the light came on for Keith Carter, and he figured out how to coach an offensive line. But right now, over the past 6 weeks, this offensive line has been damn good. This offensive line has been really good for 6 weeks now. This is the best 6-week stretch they've had in years. Brees Hall's at 5 yards a carry. Aaron Rodgers consistently has time to throw. Is he getting pressured and hit a couple times? Yeah, it's the NFL. Like, show me a line that doesn't give up a sack. So Rodgers has time. The running game is there. They're just not. Rodgers isn't throwing the ball beyond. He won't throw the ball beyond 10 yards. He's got the time to do it. People seem to think you need 10 seconds of protection to throw the ball down the field. I've seen quarterbacks take two-step drop and launch it. You don't always need that. Rodgers, an interesting point though here. Let's be fair to Rodgers. I always try to be as fair as possible to everybody. Boomer Esiason said it the other day. Maybe right, maybe wrong. Don't know. I know he's WFAN. Has been forever. But it was a clip came across. I think former Jet scout, everybody loves her, Connie Carberg. I think she retweeted it and I saw it. Boomer on FAN saying, "Look, I'm watching Aaron Rodgers and he looks hurt." He said the left leg. He said specifically left leg, not putting any weight on it when he throws. Yes, he has a history throwing off his back foot, but he's still not. When he tries to drive the ball, you're not seeing him transfer any weight to that front leg. That it, so, his best guess was hamstring, or an injury of some kind. But let's see how he looks after the bye. Wouldn't that be something? I am not saying it's going to happen, but let him come back from the bye and have them win 5 in a row. That would be just perfect, wouldn't it? Let's not. I don't even want to consider that, honestly, even though I just said it. But that's Boomer's theory. Is it Rodgers is playing on a bad leg? He's playing on something wrong. Pair Rex with a good GM again. Yeah. Dano, would Rex be a DC under Aaron Glenn? I don't think he would. Too much pride. I don't think he'd be a DC under anybody. Maybe there's one or two coaches. Maybe if he thought he was walking into a Super Bowl, maybe if Spags got a head coaching job and Andy Reid called him and said, "Hey, come win a couple of rings with me," Rex might do that. But I don't know that. Again, we've not seen Rex coach in this era. We don't know what he would be able to do. PG Hudson. See, here we go. I knew we'd get some of this, and I'm not criticizing PG. Rex was a joke, tattooing Sanchez on his arm and riding Super Bowl on a team bus. 2 championship games is not a career make. His last 2 seasons were disasters. A lot of truth to that, PG. As I said, though, I think those years that were terrible, I think the talent was terrible. I think Rex got the most out of that roster. I don't think there's a coach in the NFL that would have been competitive. Go back and look at those receivers. TJ Graham, they had non-NFL receivers, a lot of them on those. Greg Salas. I mean, they had, I don't even want to say AFL receivers or UFL, whatever it's called now. They had mediocre college receivers on those rosters. You went out and traded for Percy Harvin. When they were 1-7 or whatever it was, 1-6, 1-5, whatever the trade deadline was back then. The Sanchez tattoo was super weird. I wholly agree with that. That was weird. Writing Super Bowl again. That Rex believed that writing checks, as they say, write checks you're writing a check with your mouth, your body can't cash, whatever it is. I think his players respected him and they loved him. I remember Nick Mangold was nearly in tears talking about Rex being fired. His players loved him. And I think one of Rex's ways to motivate guys was to put it out there hey, guys, I need you to play well because I just wrote the check. I mean, that's the part that sucked. As I said earlier, LaDainian Tomlinson was like, dude, stop. But I think Rex just liked talking big to get his guys fired up. Did he learn his lesson? I don't know. I can't remember if he promised any Super Bowls in Buffalo. He may have. GM Island Empire, Rex was a joke to take. You look back at the AFC Championships. After that, what happened? Again, after that, you brought in John Idzik, and he drafted a bunch of dudes who didn't belong in the NFL. Jalen Saunders. They drafted a receiver who they cut after week 3. This must be the most unbelievable stat in the history of the NFL. If you've not heard this before, this is, I need to cut. If any mathematicians shoot me a message, I need someone to figure out the odds of this. This has to be in the hundreds of thousands to 1 odds. If you've not heard this stat before, John Idzik, when he had his 12 draft picks, drafted 3 wide receivers. I was trying to remember the names. It was Jalen Saunders, there was Shaq Evans, and Quincy Enunwa. Enunwa didn't play year 1. That year in the NFL, there were only 3 wide receivers drafted out of all of the receivers on all of the teams. Only 3 receivers did not catch a pass that year in the NFL, in an NFL game. All 3 drafted by John Idzik. That is insane. That's insane. The chances of getting 2 of them is insane. Jets drafted through every single team that drafted a receiver. Every single receiver drafted had at least 1 catch, except for the 3 guys John Idzik drafted. And none of those guys ever, it's not like, oh, well, Rex sucked. None of those guys made it anywhere. Shaquille Evans, I believe, well, not I believe, he was with the Cowboys for a little while on their practice squad. I don't think he ever made a catch. He may have gotten the game at some point, made a catch. But yeah, I mean, those teams with Kellen Winslow Jr., how'd that guy turn out? We know what Geno was as a Jet. We know what Sanchez was as a, these guys were terrible. Terrible, even though Geno was brought into putting Sanchez in the 4th quarter. Well, that's the point. That's what I'm just talking about. The Geno thing, right? That was Rex wanting to show Idzik that Sanchez was the better quarterback because Idzik wanted to go with Geno. And Geno, it took him, 8, 9 years to finally get it? At that point in time, Sanchez was the better quarterback. I recall reading a report, and it's so long ago now, I forget who it was, but there was a report at one point that when Sanchez was hurt, back on the trainer's table, Idzik, I don't know if Idzik went back there to talk to him or if Idzik just happened to be back there in the area and Sanchez saw him, and Sanchez laid into him because he knew, like, you're the reason I'm hurt. I was only in that game so that Rex could show you that I'm the better option over the guy you want to play over me. So Rex played me in a spot that I normally wouldn't, and that's what happened. So that was Rex saying, "Hey John, this guy's clearly the better quarterback. Let's give him some more live reps, and you can see it for yourself." And then that's what happened. So let's see. Matthias says it's nonsense disparaging Rex, calling him a clown. He's the last coach to take this pathetic, inept franchise to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Enough already. Again, Matthias, I don't disagree with that. But let's be fair, he was at times a clown. Now, look, the time he dressed up as Rob at the presser, that was hilarious. That was fun. I've seen people, oh, remember that time he embarrassed the team by what? Having fun for 10 minutes about his twin brother? Jesus Christ. I mean, I hate cliches like this, but those people must be fun at parties, right? Like anybody mad that a guy had fun poking a little, taking a jab at his brother. I mean, come on, man. Get over it. But again, there were other things. There were other aspects. I think the Tebow thing drove him a little bit crazy too. That was 100% not Rex. That was Rex. He was playing Tebow like 1 snap per game, like run him up the middle and get him the hell out of there. Let's see. Lawrence is good to have a coach with a personality. It was. I mean, it's not required. Winning is all that matters, but I'm not going to say it wasn't fun having Rex. Dano says, honestly, if we picked Freeman, we might have a ring in 9-10. Freeman was nice his first 2 years. Sanchez held us back despite playing well enough. Yeah, I don't disagree, Dano. I don't disagree. Freeman was one of those guys who just plummeted, right? Because you're right. He had a good couple first seasons and then right off a cliff. John Heinacke says, John Hoynacke says, I like Rex. The players played hard for him. This is a point. And he really took to heart to be a member of the Jets, and he cares about the Jets fans. He gets my old ass excited about playing. Hell, I'd suit up to play for him. I think he learned from his mistakes. He'll do what I was saying. Bring back. Let me start that over again. I think he learned from his mistakes. Oh, hell, I think it's okay. So heel. Hell, switch to heel. So hell, we all do. I say bring him back. I was a season ticket holder for 26 years. Got to see him and that team play back in the day. It was a really good team, man. It was a good team. It was a lot of fun. They were aggressive. Rex changed a little bit later, but I loved early on. They used to blitz the hell out of quarterbacks if they had a lead in the 4th quarter. Like prevent defense, nothing. We're getting after you, but then they lost a couple, and then they went prevent, and that changed it up because teams. I mean, look, the thing is, if you played the Jets back then, you had to be ready. But if you were, and Rex blitzed the hell out of you late in the game, if you're back and your tight ends picked up the blitz, the secondary was get smoked, and Rex did have to back off a little bit. GM Island Empire, the Washington coach. You don't think he learned from his mistakes? Look what he did with that program in DC. Yeah, well, again, I mean, adding Jalen Daniels helps, but I get your point. So many great coaches failed, left for a couple years, came back. Now Rex has been gone for a lot more years. Why isn't Buffalo asking for Rex Part 2? Because Buffalo's good. They don't need him, and he never had success there. Again, I'm not going to pretend I remember. I mean, one thing I remember the first pick Reggie Ragland, the linebacker from Alabama, I believe was their first pick when they hired Rex, and I just went, oh man, like that was Rex was feeding right into the people that hated. Like Rex had a hard time understanding that the game was getting faster and linebackers were getting smaller, and Reggie Ragland was a bust, and I knew he was going to be a bust. I don't pretend to know what these guys are going to be, but Ragland, I was like, that he's too big for today's NFL, too slow, and he was, and he was. Island Empire, Dick Vermeil did it. He was the greatest show on turf. Hey, look, if Kurt Warner comes with Rex Ryan, sign me up. I'll take him back tomorrow. GM Island Empire says the vibration is there. He's coming back. I'll tell you what, man. Just the fact that it's a conversation, and it should be, because again, he's publicly pining for the job. The Jets are raising ticket prices and don't have a head coach. The owner has been outed as being, too meddling, and you're going to have a hard time attracting. Listen, don't come back to me when all this is said and done if the Jets if the Jets end up with two premier candidates at GM and head coach, because I said that will happen if Woody pays through the nose. If Woody tells Ben Johnson, hey, I'll give you $20 million a year, 15, 16, 17, whatever it takes. If Woody will pay way more than anyone else will pay, then he might land somebody. But if he's looking for a guy to pay, like, I'll pay market, maybe a little over market, you're going to have to pay a lot over market to get somebody in here. That's the only way it happens. And Albert Breer said that in his article today. Joe Douglas, to come here, Joe Douglas was a highly sought after, probably the biggest fish candidate Woody's landed as a GM or head coach. Like, everybody knew Douglas was going to get a job that hiring cycle, or that was the expectation. And in order to make it happen, even Joe Douglas was like, I don't really want to work for you. I don't like what I've heard. And these aren't exact quotes, but there's a reason why Joe Douglas got a 6-year deal, which is unheard of for first-time GMs. You get a 3 or 4 year deal and prove yourself and get an extension. Joe Douglas was like, if you want me, like, I need some assurances because your roster is a little league roster. I'm going to need 2-3 years minimum to be competitive. So I'm going to need some years. And Woody gave in and gave him 6 years and got him. So there are ways to bring in the big names, but they're not going to want to come here. You're going to have to convince them. And by convince them, I mean money, money, money. Lauren says Jaime's a marketing type. He is. He's a marketing, but he's their money guy. Like I said, I was told years ago that all financial decisions run through Jaime. All big, like major financial decisions, run through Jaime. McDermott's killing. Yeah, he is. Yes, bean counters. Exactly. Let's see what else we got. Tomas says, I'm not knocking Rex, but why bring him back? That ship has sailed. Jets have no QB, yada, yada, yada. Rex would only fail here. The next coach is going to fail. Everybody knows that. Well, it's Tomas. I'm not sure when you tuned in. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for commenting. My 2 cents, my take. I'm not saying Rex is going to be back. I'm not saying I want Rex back. I think the only reason it's a consideration, or the only reason it's a talking point or worth talking about, is because I don't believe there are going to be many high-profile candidates that want this job. Woody is going to want a high-profile guy, especially given the fact, and not even high-profile, but just a guy that the fans get excited about because Woody is raising ticket prices. And at the time he fired Rex, I was told by someone in the building that Rex, and like I said, I even hate saying that because I hate when other like bloggers, dopey bloggers, and vloggers say that stuff because I don't believe it. I don't think they have sources. But this just had, and this was just like I just happened to run into somebody who was in the building, and we got to talking, and he sort of, I asked him, I said, is Rex going to get fired? Because it wasn't definite at this point. I was like, what do you think? Is Rex gone? And they were like, look, Woody doesn't want to fire him. He really likes him, but he's got to make a move. And he did. So that person was right, and I'm assuming that person was right about Woody liking him. Stefanski, I would love Stefanski. He's another guy who's been put in a really bad spot, so he's not winning. But give me Stefanski. Nobody wants to come here, says Michael McDonald. Especially now with all this Woody stuff. I'll take the guy in the media saying he wants to come back, wants to be a Jet. I'll take that guy. It's again, I think that's what I think. I think the fact they're not going to have a guy who they're not going to be able to find a guy who wants to be here. Listen to yourself. Nobody with any integrity is coming here. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough sell. I think, like I said, I think there was an article the other day from the New York Post saying, "Oh, it's fine. It's fine. There's going to be guys are going to want to come here." I saw Rich Cimini on Jake Assman's show, and Rich nailed it. Rich was like, "This is not a good situation. People are not going to want to come here." And that's, I mean, Rich nails it. Let's see. Anyone who buys season tickets is not someone I would have respect for. Season tickets are not cheap, man. Jeez. Aaron Glenn would make a splash. Agree, Lauren. Like I said, and I said it earlier. I don't know if you were tuned in. I think Aaron Glenn is my top choice. If you're going defense, get me Aaron Glenn. Absolutely. But I would rather offense. Tons of people around me not renewing, says Michael. That's not surprising. Stefanski not getting fired. Oh, that's a shame. I would have liked he would have been one of my top choices. Thanks for the update, Wild Wave. I hadn't seen that. Has that game kicked off yet? Oh, they're going to kick off in 2 minutes. I might keep an eye on our old friend Elijah Moore tonight. Elijah Moore, talented football player who for some reason doesn't produce, but since the Browns got rid of Amari Cooper, he's been getting some looks. He hasn't been lighting the world on fire, but he's been playing a lot better than he has in a very long time. He's been putting up some numbers. So let's see if Elijah Moore does anything. I like watching forward. I'm going to watch Mike Williams tonight. I'm going to watch Elijah Moore tonight. I'm a Jets fan. And if you're affiliated with the Jets in any way, what other reason do I have to watch that game? Let's see. I want Monken paired with Jim Schwartz, a Jim Schwartz type, and draft Milroe Ward, sit behind Tyrod. So let's talk about that, Peter. Monken is my number one choice. What worries me, I don't know, and I'm just guessing. I could be 1,000,000% wrong. Monken may not give a damn one way or the other. Excuse me. But I look at it and I think, does a 58-year-old want to come in and develop a quarterback? Because how often do quarterbacks win within their first 2 years, 3 years? Really? Win, Super Bowl, deep, heavy playoff run. I'm not saying it never happens, but how often does that happen? So Monken's going to be, 61 by the time his young quarterback, hypothetically, gets it, and now you're ready to make a Super Bowl run? 61, 62, does he want that? He might. Like I said, he may not care. But I think Monken would rather go to a place where there's a quarterback there that he thinks, okay, I can win with this guy. Not necessarily a Hall of Famer, but just someone he has confidence in. Now, look, if the Jets are picking in the top 5 and Monken looks at Cam Ward and says, and I think Shador's out of it. Shador will not be a Jet. Coach Prime has gone on ESPN and said, basically, if a garbage team is in position to draft Shador, I'm going to call them behind the scenes, not publicly, keep it classy, but I'm going to call that team and tell them, don't draft my son. He's not playing for you. We saw Eli do it, and Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, saying he's going to do the same thing, except his won't be public. So Shador Sanders is not going to be a Jet. So it's Cam Ward if you're going with a quarterback in the first round. And I don't know that, I don't think you can expect anybody, a young quarterback to win that quickly. So Monken is going to be, I think, out of the picture if you're thinking about handing it over. Let's see. Jets fans trash Mark Sanchez, yet he's the only player to play in back-to-back AFC Championship games. Well, listen, the thing with Sanchez, the example I always use, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Mark Sanchez wasn't good. His numbers were terrible. The Jets won despite him, basically. If the Jets had a good quarterback, they would have won 14 games. Mark Sanchez, I think it was year 2. The Jets had 3 or 4 games where the defense gave up less than 13 points or less and lost all of them. They went like 0-4 in games where they gave up 13 points or less. One of them they lost to Aaron Rodgers 9-0, or it might have been 10-9, whatever it was. I think it was 9-0 though. But they lost 4 games when the defense gave up less than 2 touchdowns with Mark Sanchez at quarterback, and they barely snuck into the playoffs. Decent quarterback play. They first round bye. So Sanchez was not good. He was in a good situation. If we're gonna suck, may as well be entertaining, says Beth Page Chris. I mean, I guess, right? Like that's what this is all. That's the whole point of this being a football fan, a sports fan, the distraction, entertain me, be fun. And they haven't been for a long time. Dano says to Chris or to Beth Page Chris, for that reason I consider it, but I don't know who would GM. Maybe Ric Flair. Woo-hoo. Perhaps. I don't know if Rick likes football. Talent on defense would be better, most likely. Most likely you're going to get the most out of your defense if you've got Rex. Remember when Idzik signed that guy to be his number one corner? I can't even remember Patterson, and he like went AWOL, just quit because he wasn't first string in a preseason game. Dimitri Patterson, I think was his name. That was John Idzik's number one corner that he had. His number one free agent addition to play corner. Unbelievable. According to Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn doesn't take nonsense from players. Flores is like that too. Yeah, absolutely. Aaron Glenn is from the Bill Parcells mold, and Aaron Glenn's had a lot of success. The more I think about it, even I'm like, oh, I don't want defense. But the more I think about the possibility of Aaron Glenn, I'm like, you know what? Move him to the top of the list, or move him ahead of some of these offensive guys. Because again, the Jets' history, I think Aaron Glenn might be the hottest candidate who would be willing because he played here. Tony says, bring back Rex and his fire to win. Well, they need somebody, and let's see. The dumbest thing I have heard was Grigson for GM. I saw that. I'm not gonna lie. I got to go back and look at his history. I can't remember who he drafted when he drafted them. I got to look at his player acquisitions. I can't remember. Rex needs a QB. Well, anyone they bring in is going to need a QB, and they don't have one. I don't think they're going to have one next year as of now. And do you draft one and play a guy early again and risk ruining another rookie quarterback? How many times are we going to play that game? Definitely need someone with fire. That would be nice. People think Rex has been out since 2016, but he's been analyzing football for years. Still, something's never changed. Football is football. Yeah, that's the thing with these analysts. How much time do they spend? And this isn't to say Rex doesn't love football or whatever, but a lot of times on these shows when they're spitting out numbers and stats, that's somebody in their ear, letting them know, hey, so and so led the league in this, or this team did that under the situation, and then they blurt it out on the air and they get to look like geniuses. And again, I'm not saying Rex doesn't pay attention, but what they're saying on air, we don't know what they know and have memorized or what is being fed to them. Loved Rex, but he hasn't coached since 16. This is true. We might be better off taking guys freshly fired because they're going to feel down and out. Maybe McDaniel. Look, I don't want a guy who just got fired. I say it all the time, and I say that's why I thought Buffalo made a mistake hiring Rex. You want to hire a guy 2 years after he got fired? Absolutely. A guy who got fired, feel sorry for himself for 10 minutes, then get back to work and have time while they're game planning as a coordinator to think about, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? Let me watch this head coach now that I'm working for. Hopefully it's successful, and try to learn from this guy and see how he handles situations compared to how I handle them. And just an opportunity to grow and learn, because so many great coaches got fired and then come back and got fired and come back again. So, but a guy who gets fired like Gase, you hire a guy who gets fired right away, you kind of reinforce, like, oh, I may have gotten fired, but it wasn't me. And this team that hired me, they saw it. They saw how good I am. I think a guy is less likely to humble himself and learn if you hire him right away. McDaniel, I would love McDaniel as an OC. Don't get me wrong. Thomas says he doesn't hate Rex, but that ship is sailed. That's kind of how I feel. I like Rex a lot, but I do feel like, no, it's not. Rex will turn us from losers to winners. Well, that would be the hope. Bieniemy scares me, says Lauren. I'll tell you what, I completely brain farted a couple weeks ago. I was talking about Bieniemy and saying what a great job he was doing in Washington. I forgot he's gone from there already. He was in Washington for a year, and now he's at UCLA, where apparently their offense isn't doing that great. Woody's going to make Phil Savage the GM and hire Rex for head coach. I'll tell you what, Phil Savage, he's been with the team for a few years now, ran the Senior Bowl, has GM experience, knows the guys in the building. I would not dismiss him out of hand. I would, if I'm, however Woody decides to run this GM search, whether it's Corn Ferry or Charlie Casserly and Ron Wolf, however Woody decides to do this thing, I would not dismiss Phil Savage. I would interview him and treat him like any other candidate. I would give Phil Savage a shot. Salah was terrible. Rex Ryan, head coach, Stefanski, OC. Well, Wild Wave just told us Stefanski is back. Cleveland said they're not firing him. Tua's a sissy. No cojones. I'm cool with Flores. Again, defensive guy, questionable quarterback. It's got to be Glenn. If it's for me anyway. If it's going to be defense, it's got to be Aaron Glenn. Turf Dome says I'll take Rex. He's a fan. I hope Phil brings his son Fred and Winnie Cooper. I'll tell you what. I was just a couple weeks ago telling my kids about that show. My kids are 12 and 10 and we're in England. They don't know anything about the Wonder Years. And I was like, I think that song came on, the Joe Cocker version. And I was telling my kids about the show and how the main star was a Jets fan. And I was like, I'm going to try to get a DVD box set because like digital, can't find it anywhere digitally. But yeah, I think I would love to introduce my kids to the Wonder Years. Rex has charisma and personality, but it's been years since he coached. That's an issue. I would have let JD pick another head coach. I believe Woody meddled more. Just gotta wait. I agree, Wild Wave. I agree. And look, I was watching McAfee earlier. I saw the clip from Orlovsky. Like Douglas is gone, but you're still seeing it. It was actually, if you watch the McAfee clip from when the Douglas firing broke, McAfee was live, and they had I think it was a former player there. I don't watch McAfee enough. I know he has guys on regularly. I know Pac-Man, but I don't know everyone he has on. But one of the dudes was like saying exactly what Orlovsky was saying, what everyone is saying, what everyone who doesn't hate Joe Douglas is saying. It's like, this doesn't make sense. Look at the talent. Look, how are you here? This team has way too much talent to be in this position. And that's where I agree. That's where I don't think talent acquisition was the problem. But again, moving on. Ric Flair would be entertaining. Yes, he would. And tons and tons in the chat. Really appreciate it, guys. We'll throw out a couple more, and then I think we all want to watch some football, right? And there's some football on. It kicked off a few minutes ago. Let's see. Brees is averaging 1.9 before contact, and Braylon 1.1. That's pretty bad indictment of the offensive line. Bethpage Chris, I'm not sure where you got those numbers. Not saying they're wrong, but if you can break those down over the past 5-6 weeks, that's where I would see the change. Because Brees Hall was at 3 yards per carry weeks 1 through 5. He is at 5 yards per carry weeks 6 through now. Braylon Allen, I've not looked at, but listen, running backs need a rhythm. Braylon Allen gets the ball so sporadically, so infrequently, I have a hard time saying, oh, that guy's struggling. Like, he gets no chance to get a rhythm going. Give him a couple drives. Give him 8, 9, 10 carries. But Brees, like I said, he's at 5 a carry since week 6, I believe. So that's a 6-game sample. That's not a tiny sample. And it's a dramatic improvement over the 3 yards per carry he averaged weeks 1 through 5. I don't understand people. I don't understand why people think that people can't change and learn from their mistakes and grow from them, says LaCorey J. 100%. And I say that about people all the time. That was part of my reasoning with Joe Douglas. Everyone's like, oh, you hired a bad coach with Saleh. I mean, first of all, Chris Johnson hired him. And that actually, I don't know, for anyone who missed that, I think I caught that a few days late. Adam Schefter was on the McAfee show. And he said the first time, if not the first time, very early on, but possibly their first meeting that Woody Johnson had with Robert Saleh, he introduced himself by saying, I didn't hire you. My brother did. Welcome to the family. Welcome aboard I didn't want you here. That guy did. So Salah, right off the bat, it's amazing he hung around as long as he did, given the fact Woody introduced himself by saying, "I didn't want you." So yeah, that was wild. But yeah, again, Chris Johnson, as per Woody, as per every media outlet at the time. And again, yeah, how much did Jaime Elhai's voice weigh? How much did Joe Douglas's voice weigh? I don't know. I just know Chris hired him. It didn't work out. But even if it was Joe, let's say Joe hired him, it was a bomb. He sucked. That doesn't mean you can't take a different approach and say. And I think this time around, they would have gone for a more experienced guy. So anyway, it's that's neither here nor there. It is gone. It is over. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for the chat, for jumping on, for joining in. Like I said, let's go watch some football. Let's even if it's not the Jets, Browns Steelers is underway, if I'm not mistaken, 12 minutes ago. So I'm gonna turn it on and I'm gonna turn this off. Tomorrow night, like I said, tomorrow night live, myself, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terraman, and we're going to go through all the Woody rumors, accusations, claims, what sounds legitimate, what doesn't, who among the three of us believes what's being said. That should be a really good time. So if you tune in now, tune in tomorrow. I am Glenn Naughton at JN Radio_Glenn. You can get Dylan at D Terraman and Chris Schubert at Chris Schubert. Have a good one, Jets fans.